This morning we're going to be reading from the book of Ecclesiastes and chapter 1 verses 1 through 11. Again, that's going to be chapter 1 verses 1 through 11. All right. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down, and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full, to the place where the streams flow. There they flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. This is the word of the Lord.
Well, it's great to be back with you this morning, and thank you to TJ for letting us use their space for today. If you're new, a warm welcome to you. And we last week just started in the book of Ecclesiastes, and we went through an overview of some handholds of how to read the book, because it's a really confusing book. And so a recap on these things as we continue in Ecclesiastes. First is the primary word that Kohelet, the author, that means teacher, uses to describe life under the sun, and he uses this word hevel. In your Bible, it's usually translated either as vanity or meaningless, but perhaps the word, it literally means breath or wisp of smoke. And so that helps get a better sense of what this word means. So anytime you see the word vanity or meaningless in your translation, think breath or wisp of smoke, which gets across a couple main ideas. One is fleeting. Life is profoundly fleeting. And second, when you think about a wisp of smoke, it's hard to grasp. You can't quite get your hands around it, getting across this idea that life is often puzzling. Things that should happen don't seem to happen, and we can't control it. Right, unless you're Gandalf and can form a ship as you blow smoke. You can't control wisps of smoke, and we can't control life. So hevel, that's the first main thing, right? that Ecclesiastes is working with. Second is, at any given moment, the author is speaking through one of three lenses, and you can think about it through looking out the window of a 3-story building. And when he's looking out on the ground level, he's surveying life on purely human terms without reference to God. So he's surveying things like work and relationships and pleasure and power and justice, as if God doesn't exist, or as if you're not giving any kind of acknowledgement to God. This is the dominant voice in the book, and that's ground level. On fewer occasions, he goes up to the second floor, where out of this window, he looks at the same territory, work, pleasure, relationships, and so forth, and understands life to be created and sustained by God, and to be a gift for us to enjoy, while not negating the pain that we often experience. And then there's just a few times where he goes up to the third floor, where he shows us that the meaning of life, the point of life, is to fear God, which means to center your life on Him, and to realize that you're not in control, but God is in control, and He is going to judge us in all things, and we'll get to that when we get to those passages. Number 3, right? So hevel, 3-story window. Number 3, just let's always keep in mind the point of Ecclesiastes. I think a lot of people think the point of the book is to depress you. It's not. The point is, amid a hevel world that's often so fleeting and so painful and puzzling, one, how can we live well, i.e., how can we have wisdom? Ecclesiastes is a wisdom book in the Bible. And number 2, how can we enjoy life for what it is as a gift? Ecclesiastes is one of the most unexpectedly happy books in the Bible. Okay, so let's always we can keep these handholds in mind as we go through, and hopefully as you're doing your own reading in the book. And so today, as we jump fully in. Chapter 1, verse 1 through 11, it serves as an intro of sorts to the rest of the book. And this whole section is written, remember, it's written from the ground level. Okay, so surveying life on human terms without reference to God. And he's going to talk about like some disturbing facts that we notice when we see that life is hevel. And so as we look at this intersection, let's consider just three very simple things. What he says, why he says it, and then number three, the difference it makes in our lives. This is what he says, why does he say it, and then number three, what difference does this make in our lives? Okay, so first, number one, what does he say? Okay, these facts that we notice when we realize that life and on human terms is hevel. And to organize this section is essentially 2 and 3 set up the fact that life is hevel, or a breath, and then there's no gain, verse 3, and then verse 4 through 11 is the meat. And verse 4 through 11, it's arranged as a chiasm, which is a literary structure where the bookends mirror each other, and then the second and second to last mirror each other, and so forth, until you have the middle, which is often the emphasis. So if you think of a simple but very fine burger, right? Bun, onion, bacon, patty, bacon, onion, bun, right? So mirroring each other, serving the star of the show, which is the patty or the bacon and the patty, right there in the middle. And so that's how this section is organized. So as you'll see, 4 and 11 mirror each other, and then we keep mirroring each other until we get to the middle. So that's how we'll work through it, because they all have a similar theme. So first, verse 4 and 11 carry this theme of if life is breath, it means that you and humankind in general, right, we have no lasting impact in our lives. So verse 4, a generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. So this phrase, a generation goes. Each generation we think we're so important and contribute so much and are so significant. And but when you compare it with the earth and the steadiness of it, you see how quickly we come and go without really changing much. And so a generation goes, at any given moment, there's roughly 3 generations alive on the planet. And right now there's about 8 billion people. So if you can imagine, you blink once, 2.7 billion people gone. Blink again, another 2.7 billion people gone. Blink a third time. Now, everybody who's alive on the earth right now is gone. And the older you get, the more you realize how true this is. Fully replaced by 3 new generations who think they're so permanent. And it's not just that we come and go, that your life goes faster than you dare believe, but no one will remember you. So verse 11, right, which mirrors verse 4 and similar theme, there's no remembrance of former things. So can you give the names of all your great-grandparents? And if you can name them, which was pretty amazing, I think if you can name them, can you tell me about their story, the things that made them them? This is recent history. And more than that, they're responsible for your existence. Their very blood flows in your veins, and this is how you repay them. Shame on you. Right? So former things we don't remember, and it's not just that we don't remember people who came before, but the same is true for you. Your great-grandkids or your friends' great-grandchildren will have no remembrance of you. Right? No kind of lasting impact that your life will have. Hevel. Okay, so no lasting impact. And then we look at verses 5 and 6, which go with verses 9 and 10, which you can summarize as no progress. No progress. It's not just we come and go quickly, but there's no remembrance, but no progress. Verse 5, the sun rises, the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes to the north. Around and round goes the wind, and on its circuit the wind returns. So the sun rises and goes down and hastens to the place. That word for hastens literally means pants. So it's like the sun and the wind, they work so hard traveling the greatest possible distance only to end up right back where they started. So just like your life, right? So much panting and working only to end up right back where you started, which is dust. Right? We start as dust, we end as dust. Each of us is, when all is said and done, nothing more than glorified roadkill. And then that mirrors verses 9 and 10, what has been and what will be, and what has been done is what will be. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It's already been in the ages before us. So what counterexample? So you're saying there's actually, right, you end up right where you started, so does everybody else. And there's no progress that we even make in these lives. And maybe what counter-argument would you make to Kohelet's point that there's nothing new under the sun? It's like, really? Smartphones, air travel, space travel, AI, that seems pretty new. And what he's saying is nothing new that has fundamentally altered the human condition. So amid all these advances, some of which are very helpful and significant, have we done anything to fundamentally alter our deepest needs? Like humankind in the individual and in the aggregate, are we more content? More calm? Is there greater relational wholeness in homes and between groups than there was 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago? One commentator on Ecclesiastes, Zach Eswine, he puts it this way. Putting a space station in the sky has not kept our families intact, delivered us from dictators, or eradicated a selfish heart. New inventions make our bones heal quicker, not our minds and hearts. So no progress for the things that we most need progress in. Hevel. Let's continue. All right, so what do we find in the middle of this sandwich? Verse 7 and 8. And this can be summed up as no satisfaction. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. So all streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. Just a funny line. So I have a bathtub in my house I use regularly to bathe my children, and I turn on the faucet, water comes pouring out, and I wait long enough and the bathtub gets full. I keep that, right, it's filled to the brim, I keep the faucet running, and it's going to overflow. And Kohelet's pointing out, we're not talking about little faucets here, we're talking about massive streams that gush into the sea, and yet the sea is never full. It never overflows. So first of all, he's like, that's weird. That's weird. Right? But it's not even a lapse in his understanding of how evaporation, right, and water cycles work. His greater point is there's no fullness in the sense of satisfaction, right? Because he ties it with verse 8. The eye is not satisfied with seeing. So despite all of our pursuit of pleasure, and you're in denial if you don't think you are not pursuing pleasure with every fiber of your being every single day. Okay? Despite of our pursuit of pleasure, and no matter how much pleasure we do obtain, okay, and moments of it, it is a endless hamster wheel of repetitive nonsense. Because we are never full of satisfaction. And all of this, right, so no lasting impact, no progress, no satisfaction, are illustrations of breath, hevel in verse 2, and then no gain. There's nothing we gain when all is said and done. So no matter your vocation, stay-at-home parent, whether you're a college student, whether you work in technology or government or education, you work so hard. And in your work, you lose a lot of sleep, and you miss out on time with friends and family, and develop ulcers and stress-related health issues. And you punch in, you punch out, you punch in, you punch out. It's Monday now, it's Tuesday now, it's Wednesday now, another trip to the grocery store, another Sunday of meal prep, another stop at the gas station, another load of laundry, another hard conversation. And then when you do find leisure, you often find that you just need more of it until finally you punch out for the last time when you die, and then no one remembers your name 100 years from now, and your life has zero impact when all is said and done. You're like a premature resident in a retirement home where you wake up, you're wheeled out to a common area, you stare at a plane while you're wheeled back, where you punch out finally for the last time where no one remembers you. Hevel. And so this is what he's saying. This is what your life is and my life is. Right? If there is no personal God. And I encourage you to sit with this, whether you're not a Christian or whether you're a Christian. Like, don't be too quick to be like, yes, but Jesus, because we need to, or don't think about the whatabouts, right? Or the edge cases that you feel like might disprove some of Kohelet's points, because these are all ways of avoiding the factual message that he's conveying. And when we do that, we miss out on this key lesson that we need to become wise. That life under the sun is hevel. That's what he says. Which leads to number 2. Why is he saying it? Okay, so why is he telling this? And first of all, and we've been alluding to it, first he tells us because he wants us to see reality for what it is. Right? If there is no creator personal God, when we don't live in reference to God, we need to see, and how life just often looks, right? Even if you're a firm believer. There's this line that T.S. Eliot has where he says, humankind cannot bear very much reality. You think, like, this is why a number of married couples really don't like to, or just may never, sit down, slow down, and talk about like the real issues in the relationship, because it's either just too painful or too exhausting. It's why a lot of us parents, right, just go to our screens, because reality, the real person in front of us, is just a lot more complicated and a lot harder and more tiring than looking at a screen. It's why many of us at the end of the day just want to check out with a screen, right, rather than maybe being with a real person or just thinking about the realness of our lives. But we need to see reality for what it is. Because, why point 2, why else does he just show this? We need to see reality for what it is, because if you don't want to live a shallow and unexamined life, which I don't think any of you do, right, we need to take stock of what's going on, because in addition to seeing reality for what it is, he wants us to redirect ourselves to where meaning and joy are actually found. For especially young, successful people, which doxology is filled with, Ecclesiastes doesn't always hit, because it's like, well, of course I'm not satisfied yet because I just haven't done all the things that I want to do. And one commentator pointed out that Job learned a lesson, right, by having everything taken away. Kohelet learned his lesson by getting everything he ever wanted. And so we do well to learn from him now, while many of us are still young, so we stop running after these things that they keep promising to deliver and never will. Which leads to number 3, why does he tell us, right? To see reality what it is, to redirect us from where we often run to for meaning and joy, to help us see the one who gives us what we need, right? Because if there is nothing about your life that your inevitable death will not destroy, which is true with life under the sun, then we need something or someone who can defeat death. And this is who we have in Jesus. Right? Jesus comes, and through his death, he defeats death, because death can't hold him in his resurrection. And just as under the sun, there is no hope for anything new or anything that can actually progress or have permanence. Jesus comes from above the sun to make you and all things new and give you a life that can make a real difference. And it is factually true. It is factually true that without Jesus, your life and my life and no human life matters. And few people are honest enough to admit this. And yet with Jesus, you and everything else can and do matter. And so before we move into point 3, just what difference does this make in your life? I hope this is not just if this is like a fun academic exercise, I don't think you're getting what Kohelet is saying. And so if you're here and you're not a believer, just encourage you to honestly sit with this message. And if you are a believer, this is a good chance to examine where in my life you're just functioning on a week-to-week basis. Because I do love Jesus. And yet, Monday afternoon, Saturday morning, I really am so driven by this, right? More than Christ. Seeking it or this person to give me the type of, whatever that is, right? The calmness, the ecstasy, the stability that I'm looking for. Because it's only in Jesus do we have what we need. Which leads to number 3, right? What difference does this make in our lives when you do unite yourself to Jesus and allow him to unite himself to you by faith? And here's how a friend of mine sums up the message of Ecclesiastes. Nothing matters. Everything matters. It's a fair summary of Ecclesiastes. Nothing matters. Everything matters. As we've been saying, right, without the world being created and sustained by God, without Jesus, nothing matters. And with Jesus, everything matters. So your work matters. Right? Without Christ, the things you do, punch in, punch out, it won't amount to anything. But yet, with Jesus, your work, whatever it is that you do, right, from the exciting to the menial, Jesus uses to have ripple effects into eternity. And your work can now be done in gratitude to God and for love of neighbor. Parents, your parenting matters. We have a lot of young kids in this church where you literally over 200 times will repeat the same thing. And it seems like you're accomplishing nothing with your child. And yet with Jesus, every little act of parenting you do matters, and he uses in the eternal story of your kid. Nothing you do as a parent is in vain. Your enjoyment matters. When you have a good meal or listen to music that stirs your blood or you do something fun with a friend, these moments of enjoyment are no longer means of escapism or things we seek divinity in, but they now can be savored for what they are. Gifts from Christ's personal hand and as appetizers of the renewed world to come. Your pain and health issues matter. Suffering is often used as an argument against the existence of God, and that there is an argument there. However, we don't often consider that you realize without Jesus, any suffering you've been through or are going through is utterly pointless. It's utterly meaningless. And yet with Jesus, what your suffering means is, look at his nail-scarred hands. It means so much to him that he came to go to a cross for you and then now stay by your side in the valley of shadow until he brings you home. Because your suffering and pain matters to him. even your death matters. You are glorified roadkill. Even that is giving you too much credit without the resurrection. And yet with Jesus, your death matters and is the gateway into life with him. Wow. Everything matters. And so, and most of all you, right? I don't believe the lie that something about you, your story, the person you're becoming doesn't matter, because you do in the hands of Christ. And as an application, as we think about what to do with this as we walk away, hopefully there's already plenty to chew on, but here's something that I was thinking about. If with Christ everything matters, which means that your work really matters, and people matter, I think a primary practice that we need to grow in is presence. And this is, I don't know, maybe depending on your algorithm or the circles that you run, and this is an increasingly common word, so maybe you've become numb to it, but I encourage you to hear it anew, right? The importance of presence if everything does matter. And presence is, the most helpful definition I've heard to understand it is, presence is caring about the person in front of you so much that you're not thinking about the other things you need to be doing or the other places that you'd rather be. Because how many times were you're with somebody and you're just thinking about, like, I just can't wait to get home? Or like you're at maybe like a weekend event that you were invited to, or some kind of evening function, or you're with a coworker that bores you or drives you crazy. Or I found, I can't remember if I've shared this from up front or not, but something that's really convicted me over the past year. And if you're I think before I became a parent, I would hear things like this, but you are so cold-hearted. But if you're a parent, you kind of get this. I began to view the dinner hour as just like the thing I just needed to get through to get to the thing that I was really looking forward to, which is either like hanging out with a friend or a book and a bowl of ice cream. I was just like, wow, okay, your children now are hindrances to and they can sense that. Right, to just the thing that you really want to get to. And the dinner hour is probably maybe the most important hour of the day. And there is so much opportunity here. Right, and so just think about church. Like right now, you might be thinking about, Steve, why is the sermon still going? Like, I got stuff to do. I have a lunch I'm really looking forward to. I don't know if the World Cup's on in there. Just like all these things that we're always thinking about getting to, it pulls us out of where we are. And I'm reading this book called Unreasonable Hospitality. Maybe some of you have read it, by Will Guidara. And he owned and operated the #1 restaurant in the world for a while, 11 Madison Park, located in Manhattan. And he talks about the importance of presence. And what first turned him on to it is he said, so there was one day, it was a lunch hour, and the front of house needed help. And he's this guy, he owns, right, like top restaurant in the world, but the front of house needs help. And his dad had taught him, like, there should never be, no matter what you do with your life, son, there should never be a task that's below you. And so he goes out front of house, and so he's attending, he's helping clearing tables, he's attending to people who are there, and he's paying attention. And he hears this group of 4. They're a group of European foodies who traveled to New York just for the food. And he overhears one of them say, because his restaurant is the last stop on their way to the airport, and one of them says something to the effect of, it's just a shame amid all these great restaurants we went to, we never got to try a New York City street hot dog. And so like a light bulb goes off over Will's head, and he sprints outside, careens around the corner, goes to a street cart, buys, for like $2, a New York City hot dog. He goes back in. He has to convince his Michelin star chef to serve this hot dog in his restaurant. So he chops it up into 4 plates, puts some fancy little swishes of ketchup and mustard and a micro herb on top. And right before their 2-week aged duck course arrives, he walks out to the table and he delivers them this hot dog. He says, I just didn't want you to miss out on a true New York City experience before you left. And he said, he said, I've served literally over millions of dollars of food in my career. And never once have I seen somebody this excited about a meal. Why? Because it was the hot dog, but more than that, they felt so seen. And he then taught all his servers to be present. Because he said, that magical moment with the hot dog, it wouldn't have happened if I was just sitting there thinking like, man, being out here clearing tables, front of house, this is below me. I'd rather be here. I can't wait for what I'm going to do after I get off my shift tonight, because he was paying attention to the people in front of him. And so he taught all of his servers to be present, to not be thinking about the other things they needed to be doing or wanted to be doing. And all kinds of stories started to emerge. So one server overheard a couple whose wedding had to be canceled because of family drama, and they found out what the couple's first dance song was going to be. And so what they did is, at the end of this couple's meal, they cleared the floor above to be like a mock wedding reception area, and brought them up and let them dance to what was going to be their song, their first dance song as a couple. And all kinds of stories like this. This is partly why they became number one in the world. It wasn't the food. It was how they were present to the people. And, this is why Jesus, one of the reasons he was so potent, because he was with every person. He was so present. And I think about the people who have made the greatest difference in my life. It's those who just, when I'm with them, I'm not even putting it into words, but they're not thinking about the other things they would rather be doing. And so if everything matters with Jesus, and it does, and if people really matter because they're made by God and loved by Jesus, then just think about like where do you need to be more present? Especially with the people or the work that you find it really hard to be present to. Just this week, just in the moment, try to catch yourself from, if you're daydreaming about it, just can't wait to escape to get to this other thing. And as you do, other people will experience Jesus, who tells them they matter too. Let's pray.